Are you mentally ready for the challenges of a thru hike? I think it's high time to get real about what you should expect. So let's get started right now. So guess where I was 5 years ago today? I was on the top of Mountain Katahdin in what was one of the most mentally challenging endeavors of my entire life up until the Colorado Trail this summer. That should have been the end of my Appalachian Trail thru hike, but for me, it wasn't. It was for the rest of my trail family. I still had more hiking to do, which made it a really bittersweet moment. I had to go on and flip south and fill in my holes, and then actually come back the next summer and fill in more holes until I did the whole trail. And for those of you who are out there thinking about tackling a thru hike, whether it's going to happen coming this spring or it's a faraway goal, there are a lot of things to think about to make sure that you are mentally ready for a thru hike. It's kind of a random list, but I do plan to write an actual blog post. If you want to print it off and save the notes, you can do that. You can find it on my website, which is joyfulrambler.com. Let's take a few minutes and go through the list and see how you're doing. When you're dreaming about thru hiking or thinking about thru hiking in a little bit more realistic fashion, it's really easy to fall into the trap, if you will, of thinking that it's going to be just a beautiful, amazing thing. And if you look at all of the cool photos on Instagram and people's posts on other social media, they tend to glamorize it, right? Make it look like it's just a beautiful walk in the woods, which it is on some days, and other days it's not. So in my thru hiking experience, I have come to the conclusion that success in a thru hike is really not about the physical. I mean, sure, your body needs to be in shape in order to hike all those miles, but if your brain is not in the right place, you're not going to succeed. So I would say that thru hiking is probably about 60% mental and 40% physical. At least that's what I found to be true for myself. So these points that I have to share with you, I'm going to offer up in no particular order, just kind of as they come to mind. But first and foremost, I think before you endeavor to take on a thru hike, you want to be sure that you're ready for a life change. Because honestly, no matter how solid your mental state is and how strong you are physically, you're not going to be able to complete a thru hike without coming through the other side being somehow changed. Those changes are so hard to quantify or explain because they're different for everybody. It could be that you find out that you're more open-minded. It could be that you find out you're stronger than you expected you were. It could be that you find out that you don't really like thru hiking. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that can change you, can make you more independent, more persistent, more flexible. I can't tell you what those things are going to be, but I can tell you that you will be different by the time you finish that thru hike, whether it is a 2-week hike or just a few hundred miles, or it's a 2,000 plus mile hike of the AT or the PCT or even the CDT. So how do you get ready for that? How do you get ready for your life to change when you can't even begin to imagine what those changes might look like? The first, I think, is really to understand some of the challenges that you might face and at least kind of think through, based on your personality, your past experiences, how you might deal with some of those things. And if they are completely foreign to you, try to think about, strategize how you might deal with them when you're faced with them. The first thing that I think most people deal with when they're starting a thru hike is just the fear that comes from facing the unknown, not knowing what it's like to hike day after day, not knowing what it's like to carry everything you need on your back, not knowing what it's like to encounter wildlife or to meet people who maybe are completely out of your normal social sphere. There's all kinds of fears: camping alone, getting lost, getting hurt. Think about, how do you deal with fear and how will you deal with fear on the thru hike? Because there is no doubt that when you start, there's going to be a certain level of fear, and at various times in your hike, you're going to encounter fear. What are you going to do about that? Another thing to think about before you start are, what are your expectations for the thru hike? Do you expect that you're going to sail through and just do the whole thing no matter what? When I started the AT, I expected that I would finish that hike come hell or high water. It might take me longer than I expected. It might be harder than I expected because, of course, I had all that unknown. I'd never done a thru hike before. But I thought that I could do it. My expectations were maybe a little too high in terms of how easy that might be for me, at least mentally. I don't think I was mentally prepared for the challenges that I was going to face. Think about your expectations for the hike, how you expect you will perform, how you expect things will go, and check yourself, I guess. Make sure that you don't have expectations that are too high or that are unrealistic. And look back at your past patterns of behavior. I mean, what have you done when you've been faced with intense challenges? Is that the kind of thing that makes you want to just go home or curl up in a ball or take a day off? Do you rally when you're faced with a challenge? Thinking in advance about, number one, what are your habits and how do you tend to deal with those things? And maybe there's habits that you want to change. Maybe you want to be different on the trail. You might even sit down and write out a list of like the top 3 or the top 5 things that you expect from the hike, and maybe carry that with you to look back on at times of challenge. Were my expectations realistic, or did I expect too much? All right, so let's talk about discomfort, because through hiking is nothing if it is not uncomfortable. You are going to have days where you're soaking wet. You're going to have times when you're cold. You're going to have wet feet that don't want to dry. You're going to have pain, and that pain is going to make it hard to sleep. You're going to find out that you don't sleep well because the moon is too bright, or the animals are too loud, or somebody's snoring. What are you going to do about all that discomfort? Can you just roll with it? Or is it something that's going to start eating at you and make your thru hike thoroughly unpleasant? Another thing to think about is fatigue. And of course, it's going to be the worst when you first start. In your first week or 2 of the hike, you're not only just tired from hiking all day, every day, you may not be eating great, so that's going to contribute to your fatigue. You might not be sleeping well, so that's going to contribute to your fatigue. And then there's a phenomenon that I call just cumulative fatigue. It's one thing to go on a hike for 12 or 15 miles for a day, or even just a weekend, but when you do that day after day after day until your body really gets accustomed to it, until you really get your trail legs, you're going to get more and more and more tired, and you may find that you need to stop, that you need to take a 0 day or shorten up your days or adjust your mileage based on the terrain and how you're feeling. They're physical issues, but they can get in your head real fast. So if you're tired and you wake up and you think, oh my God, I'm just exhausted, I don't want to get up and hike, that's a mental issue in terms of how you deal with the fatigue. So be prepared for that and have some strategies for how you might adapt to be able to manage the fatigue so that it doesn't make you want to go home. So let's talk about wildlife. It's beautiful to watch the deer go by and the birds and squirrels and chipmunks and marmots and that kind of thing, because you don't think they're going to eat you. But what about if you run into a mountain lion or a bear? I came around the corner in the Shenandoahs one day, and there was a bear 15 feet ahead of me on the trail, and he didn't want to move. On the PCT, I hiked around a bend, and I scared a mountain lion. I didn't see him, but I knew exactly what he was. And that kind of got to me, because I thought, wow, is he stalking me? He certainly growled, let me know he was there, and didn't like my presence. Wildlife is the thing where it can be exhilarating. When I did actually see a mountain lion on the Colorado Trail one morning, it made my day. It was amazing. And I thought, this is just amazing, majestic animal. What a blessing that I get to see it. But I saw him from a distance, and if I'd seen him up close, I might have felt a lot differently. I had a friend on the AT. She had a moose kind of chasing her around a tree, and thankfully another hiker came along and kind of scared the moose off, but they can be aggressive. If you encounter wildlife, are they going to scare you to the point where you feel like it's not worth hiking anymore? And the fear can mess with your head, and if it gets to be too much, it can definitely affect your thru hike. Things that are beyond your control. No matter how ready you are to hike physically and mentally, there's going to be something along the trail, whatever trail it is, that throws you. It could be a wildfire enclosure where you have to get off the trail for anywhere from, 5 miles to hundreds of miles, or it might potentially end your hike where you have to come back again the next year. That just happened to a friend of mine who did the PCT last year, and he had to go back this year and finish up, which not everybody's able to do. You might be hiking with somebody who gets sick or gets injured, and you have to deal with that experience. You might have gear failures that you don't expect and can't control. What happens if your tent gets broken in a high wind? Something happens with your shoes and you're hiking with, shoes that are flopping around or shoelaces that are broken. Think about how resourceful you're going to be in those situations, and do you have that sort of mental agility to say, okay, well, this just happened and here's what I'm going to do to fix it, or here's what I'm going to do just to get me to the next town. Not only how are you going to like literally fix the problem, but how are you going to deal with it mentally? If you've got a good friend that you're hiking with and they get taken off the trail or they decide to leave for their own reasons, what's that going to do to you? Is that going to be such a setback that you can't continue? There are so many things along the trail that could be completely beyond your control, and they can really do a number on you if you're not sort of mentally prepared to adjust as needed. Being dirty. Most of us don't love to be dirty, and we are probably used to taking a shower at least once a day. And when you get out on the trail, of course, that doesn't happen. Not only are you dirty, your clothes are dirty, dirt gets in your tent, dirt gets in your backpack, dirt gets everywhere. There is a lot of discomfort in being dirty and being stinky and not being able to get your things really clean, even if you can wash them out in a creek. And it is such a delight to get into a trail town and be able to jump into a shower at a hostel and get clean and shave and wash your hair and do your laundry. Being dirty can also be a mind, you know what? For some people, it's a lot harder than others. If you're kind of a clean freak, it might be a huge adjustment for you. For other people, it's like, yeah, whatever, I'm dirty, I don't care. It can just sort of erode your sense of well-being, your sense of happiness, your sense of satisfaction, because you just feel icky. And of course, there are things that you can do, like I carry some dry wipes, and when I can in the evening, I'll wet them down and clean my feet and wash my face and things like that, just to make me feel a little bit more refreshed. And it's amazing what that can do for your mindset. If you're a person who just really can't cope with dirt, thru hiking might be a bit of a challenge for you. What is a drone that just went by? What about boredom? Are you the kind of person who gets easily bored when you're walking on the trail? I mean, sometimes it's just breathtaking at every step. And other times you might be thinking, okay, one more mountain, one more pud, pointless ups and downs. Going into Lake City, there was this 6-mile hike through a mesa, and it was beautiful at first, but man, I just wanted to be done. 6 miles is a long way. Went through a beautiful 6-mile meadow. Again, 6 miles is a long way. Some people just get bored with hiking every day. And I've even heard of people getting off the trail because they found hiking boring. If you're one of those people who can be like, oh, look at these beautiful grasses, or look at the birds, and if that's enough for you, great. But if you find that you're easily bored, or that you go on day hikes and you're bored, you might want to rethink through hiking, because unless you can find a way to make that experience new and exciting and refreshing every day, you might find yourself bored, and that's not what you want from a thru hike. I don't think that's in your list of expectations, right? Boredom. Nope, don't want that. Think about that, and think about what it takes to make you feel excited and fulfilled as you're hiking. And this one, it was a real challenge for me on the Colorado Trail, and that was loneliness, because I was hiking alone and I had literally days where I'd barely seen another hiker. I did feel lonely. I missed having that camaraderie that you find on the Appalachian Trail, especially if you're in the bubble where there's tons of hikers and you might meet people. And even though you might go your separate ways, you're probably going to see them again further down the trail. So you sort of have these friendships that you forge that are really a lot of fun and can be very rewarding. But when you're hiking alone on a trail that's less populated, and this happened to me on the PCT as well. I mean, I think I went 2 days where I only saw one hiker. And that can be hard. And there's also the aspect of loneliness of like, do you miss your family? Do you miss your partner? Do you miss your pets? That can be tough, especially if you're gone for 5 or 6 months. Dealing with loneliness is a real mental challenge for a lot of people, particularly very, very social people. Staying in touch, doing video calls when you're in town, sending postcards, getting care packages, those can help. So how do you feel about dehydration? That's a real challenge. It's a health issue for one. Not knowing where your next water source is going to be, and if you're going to have water in 3 miles or 10 miles or 20 miles, can also be a mental challenge, because you're constantly thinking, okay, do I need to camel up here? When's my next water going to be? Is the water going to be where I think it's going to be? Or maybe I'm going to count on it and get there and find out that it's dry. And those kinds of things, they affect your mindset. They make you feel less confident in the ability to hike, because you don't know if you're going to be hiking without enough water in your system. You don't know if you're going to be in a situation where you could be dangerously dehydrated. So availability of water and dehydration is a real issue, both physically and mentally, because it becomes a mind game. You know, how far is the next water? When am I going to get there? Am I going to have to dry camp? And if I dry camp, how far to water the next morning? All of those kind of things just sort of bundle up. They can just weigh on your mind. And even if you're not really consciously thinking about them, they're sort of there at the back, creating anxiety and concern. It's a very real issue. Along with dehydration is the issue of diet and being able to eat well. Trail food is notoriously not healthy. If you've got special dietary needs, if you're vegan, if you've got some kind of issues in terms of what you can and can't eat, it can be hard to get good food along the trail. Even if you don't have a special diet, it can be hard because you're not eating the kinds of foods that you're used to. You're probably not getting enough fat in your diet. And your body needs, obviously, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to be healthy. So you have to get a good balance. Really take advantage of trail towns so that you can kind of load up on the right kind of food. And thank God for Trail Magic, because sometimes your food bag's almost empty, or you're sick of everything that's in there and you want something different, and you come to a trailhead and there's somebody providing Trail Magic. And if you're really lucky, they have a Mountain Dew, which is my favorite, or candy bars, or even cooking burgers or breakfast or something like that. Eating well is difficult. That's going to affect your mindset too. Mentally, it's going to be a challenge because maybe you're not hungry, or maybe you've got intense hiker hunger and you just can't seem to eat enough, or you're afraid to eat too much and run out of food before you get to the next town. Diet is both physical and mental, like so many of these things. Worrying about food can, make you anxious. Not eating well can make you feel poorly. And when you feel poorly, you're more likely to kind of go to the dark places or feel negative about your hike. And making sure that you're getting good food is really important. And I would caution you, if you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, don't worry, I got this, I'm going to send resupply boxes. I can pretty much guarantee you that you are not going to want what's in those resupply boxes at some point along your hike. Maybe send a few things as special treats, maybe send a few things with some homemade dehydrated meals that you really like, but also just take advantage of the trail towns, do the resupply. Yeah, make sure that you're eating as well and as much and being as healthy as you can. Losing weight is kind of a related issue. When I started my AT thru hike, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna lose some weight, that's gonna be awesome. And the first few weeks I kind of limited my food a little bit, and then I realized that I was losing too much weight too fast. And I really had to start focusing on getting healthy fats into my diet, making sure that I, added olive oil to my ramen and stuff like that, so that I wouldn't lose too much weight too quickly. Because if you do that, your body's in a starvation mode, and it's not going to want to be hiking 15, 18 miles a day, or even 10 miles a day. Mind your weight, and yeah, you might be starting a thru hike thinking this is a great way to lose weight, and it is, but just be careful that you don't lose too much too fast. Do your best to eat well, because that's going to affect your mindset a lot. All right, there are two more things that we need to talk about, and let's start with money, because having enough money to do your thru hike can make the difference between enjoying it and getting the rest you need. Like, can you afford to go into a hostel? Can you afford to go to a restaurant in town and have a good meal? Can you afford to do something fun with friends? Maybe you want to go whitewater rafting or something like that. Having enough money just gives you peace of mind. Save as much as you can for your thru hike, whatever that amount is going to be. I mean, I would say if you can do $1,000 a month, then that's amazing. It will allow you to do some side trips, some fun things in town, take some zeros, that kind of thing. If you can't, and you've only got $500 a month for your hike, you just have to budget carefully and be careful with your resupply. Take advantage of hiker boxes, stretch your money. Make sure that you have a budget, that you have saved some money, and you know how much you're going to be able to spend, so that you don't have that financial anxiety as you hike, being like, well, dang, this is a 6-month hike and I think I'm going to run out at month 4. That's no fun, because you're into it, you're invested in it. Have the money that you need so that you can really thoroughly enjoy the experience, and that financial worries are not detracting from your thru hike. So what kind of support system do you have for your thru hike? When I started thinking about doing the AT, I had support from my family, although there were also folks who thought I was a little bit crazy. Some were like, oh, that's absolutely awesome, I wish I could do it. And other people were like, why do you want to do that again? Having a good support system is important. And the fact that I did not have a lot of thru hikers and backpackers in my life led me to actually start this channel, back in 2017 because it's like, I need a community of sort of like-minded people, and if I find them online through YouTube, then great, so be it. Now I've got thousands of people who I've connected with, and they're curious and they want to learn some of the things that I've learned, and they can teach me a thing or two as well. So having that online support system is great. Go to hiker meetups and, maybe even go to the AT kickoff or some other hiker event. Meet other folks who have thru-hiked. Connect with people in social media groups or on Instagram to create some community so that when things are going rough, that you have people to talk to. And I realize that you might find a trail family and they can support you as well, but sometimes you have issues with your trail family. That does happen. Having a good support system to help you work through those things is vitally important. It doesn't always have to be somebody that you can call up or sit down with or FaceTime with or have a Zoom call, whatever. It might also just be somebody who gives you support and doesn't even realize it. Somebody in the local community that I met that had thru-hiked, and he's like, let me just send you a note. And he sent me a list of, I think it was about 28 points of things that he learned in his thru-hike in 2016 that he wanted to share with me. And I actually printed that paper out and I kept it in the front of my journal, and I read that many, many times over the course of my thru-hike to just remind me of things. Like one thing he said was that the person you are at mile 1 and mile 1000 and mile 2000, that's 3 different people, because you're going to change so much during the course of the thru-hike. And I thought that was really good advice. And then I also wrote a note to myself just to remind me of my why. And I think, depending on what kind of support system you have, being able to remind yourself of why you're out there is also very important. Having people who can talk you off a ledge is important. Having people that you can cry to when you're on top of a mountain and you're feeling terrible. Make sure that you have some kind of a support system in place, whether that's friends, family, acquaintances, people that you even barely know who can share their experiences and provide support. That does happen. I've seen it time and time again on social media, in the Facebook groups, where somebody reaches out and says, I don't know what to do. Somebody is going to step up and provide some support. You might also find it from trail angels in the community, just people in the grocery store. Like, are you thru-hiking? And you're like, yeah, it's not going so well. And they're going to be like, I'm so proud of you. Keep it up. What is that support system that's going to help you not only create the right mindset for the beginning of your hike, but keep it up all through the hike when you do hit those walls? Because there are going to be walls, there can be cliffs, there's going to be mountains, of course. Find some folks that can help you get through those tough times so that you can actually complete the hike that you have dreamed of doing for so long. All right, so I have given you a whole host of things to think about, things that might potentially endanger your thru-hike. But I also want to leave you with some tips on how you can protect your mindset or shore it up when you need to. So in terms of preparation, I would say definitely doing a little bit of a longer hike as training. It's great to do day hikes. It's great to do an overnight. You might find that just going out for 3 or 4 nights is a world of difference from just that single overnight. It gives you a chance to see how you feel when you start hiking day after day, both physically and mentally. So I highly recommend doing that. Try making a list of your whys. Maybe write yourself a letter. You can even just keep it on your phone of like, why am I out here? What do I want to get out of the hike? What are my expectations? And then you can kind of check yourself periodically. Are you on track? Do you need to either come back to what that original motivation was because you've lost track of it? Or do you want to sit down and be like, I expected this, but it's not what I'm getting, because then that gives you an opportunity to reset and be like, okay, is what I'm getting what I need? Is it what I want? And they do have a saying that you've probably heard called the trail provides, and it does, whether it's mental, physical, food, whatever it might be. The trail just has this sort of magical way of giving you what you need, and sometimes it is not what you expect, but it's absolutely what you're going to need. The person that you start at is not going to be the person that you are several hundred miles in and even at the end of your hike. So take stock of that, and maybe you might find it's even kind of fun to think about how you've changed. Sometimes you might not be able to really address that until after you get back and you process what you've been through, which is completely okay. Don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're not registering fully the whole experience, because it does take time to just sort of digest it, process it. Another thing that I find is very helpful is just to understand that when you're thru-hiking, your emotions can change on a dime. You might feel that you're a very level-headed, even-keeled person. I tend to be pretty calm even in the face of adversity, but I cry on thru-hikes, And one moment I might be just absolutely losing it, crying it, frustrated, and then I'll go 50 feet, a mile, not far, and something will completely change my mindset, whether it's trail magic or running into somebody that I haven't seen in a while, or an amazing wildlife sighting that just makes me think, okay, I was miserable half an hour ago, but right now I know exactly why I'm here. If you quit too soon, you're going to miss those moments. They say never quit on a bad day, and if you're struggling with your thru hike, then it absolutely makes sense to give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, stop, go to, whether you stop on the trail or go into a trail town, taking a day off can really, really make a difference, or even just slowing your pace instead of maybe you're doing 15, 16 miles a day and it's too much. Give yourself time to just sort of sit and enjoy the views or reflect or think about, why you're out there and if you want to stay out there. There is no harm in going home, honestly. I know, like I said at the very beginning, when I started the AT, I was going to finish come hell or high water. And I didn't know the lessons that I needed to learn. I didn't know the challenges that were ahead of me. And I didn't know that I'd have to go back to get to the end. But that's what happened. And it taught me that I had persistence and tenacity that maybe I didn't really fully understand was a kind of asset for me. I mean, you're going to get slapped in the face, literally and figuratively, probably at times. And things are going to go wrong. You're going to fail. You're going to miss friends. You're going to fall. You're going to get hurt. All that is part of the thru hiking experience, but don't give up too soon, and then don't be afraid to not finish if that's the right thing for you to do. Nobody starts a thru hike thinking, I might go home in a month, but it happens. People go home on day 2. I've seen it, literally, I have seen it. If you just really give yourself some time to think through it, and you've taken a day off, you've changed your pace, you've maybe, if you're solo hiking, started hiking with other people and you're still not enjoying it, life's too short. There's plenty of other things that you can do, so it is okay to say, yep, this is not my thing. But if you think it's your thing and you're just having a rough time, then give yourself some grace, do some things to make it feel better. And like I said, things can turn on a dime, so you might be having the worst day ever and then get into camp and run into some people that you haven't seen in a while and find out you have a great evening and you're reinvigorated to keep going. So don't quit too soon. And then finally, just be flexible, because like I said, no thru hike is ever what you envision it's going to be. No thru hike is completely smooth sailing, and you just need to be flexible. So you get to a certain point and there's a fire closure for the next 20 miles. Use that as an opportunity to go into town and see something different before you go back on the trail. Part of the experience is really figuring out just how resilient you can be. Yeah, your thru hike, whatever trail you're doing, is going to hand you some unexpected things. Maybe the plan is I've sent resupply boxes every 20 miles. I've got a day off every week. That's what I planned at the beginning of my AT hike, and now I laugh about it because it just was so unrealistic. But yeah, just be flexible, be ready to roll with it and do what needs to be done to get through if that's what you really, really want to do. And I want to wish you the happiest of hikes, and if I've forgotten something that you feel is important, then make sure you drop that down in the comments. I read every single one, try to respond to as many as I can. Please subscribe to this channel. It's a great way to let YouTube know that you're enjoying my content and help me to get it in front of other people. I'm trying to grow my channel just past 4,000 subscribers, and I'm hoping that I'll get to 5,000 before the end of the year, so that would be awesome. And if you are already a subscriber, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you being with me, and I will look forward to seeing you here next time.